The Sisters Grimm podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Please listen at your own discretion. Tiptoe through the window.
The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The most notorious serial killer in the nation.
The Night Stalker.
The Boston Strangler.
The Son of Sam.
The infamous Zodiac Killer.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Get away from her, you bitch!
Welcome to the Sisters Grimm podcast.
How'd you do this? Show you.
It's 2020, baby, and I'm all about getting in shape and going to the gym. And my new favorite gym accessories are my Studio 12 earbuds.
We love Studio, and we've been talking about them for years. You don't have to be a gym goer to enjoy their 12 earbuds.
With their wireless earbuds, you can now bring your music wherever life takes you and enjoy unrivaled sound that makes you feel like you're center stage.
They are extremely cute, and they're ultralight charging cases. You can take them anywhere.
You can go to studio.com to get 15% off your entire order using code GRIM with 2 M's at checkout.
That's right, Morgan. That's GRIM for 15% off.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Sisters Grimm podcast. We are back for another episode.
Yep, back in the attic. Back at it again.
Back again.
If you've listened to our last couple episodes, we've been saying things that we see where we're sitting, and I think in the first one, I said I saw a picture of us. That picture has been knocked over.
That's scary. Which picture?
It's like you can't see it from where you're sitting, but it's also, it's creepy. So, this episode, as y'all have read, is about Arizona murders and deaths.
And killings
that happen.
All of that.
It's our Arizona episode, like we have Illinois.
It's our continuation of the 50 states, and soon we will move into other areas of the world that aren't America.
We should do province by province in Canada.
Okay.
And we
already had a Canadian episode.
Oh, you're right. We lumped them all together. Sorry, y'all. Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Holly, did you know that the Miranda rights were established in Arizona?
I did not actually know that.
So when I was just looking up stuff, I found out that in 1966, a Mesa man named Ernesto Miranda was arrested for the rape and kidnapping of a woman. He did not kill her, which is why he's not my person, because he didn't kill anyone, actually, that we know of. But when he was questioned, he was never told that he had the right to an attorney or that he had the right to remain silent.
So he was just blabbing his mouth off?
And he confessed. But this obviously went against his 6th and 14th Amendment rights. And so he was retried without any of his confession, and he was still arrested and sentenced to 20 years in jail, or prison rather. And then when he was released, he was fatally stabbed in a bar fight and died. So,
oof.
I just wanted to talk about that for a second.
The 6th Amendment is a right to a speedy trial.
Yeah.
And the 14th Amendment is
that one has to do with
all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. Okay, cool. No state shall
his
make
name
or
was
enforce
Ernesto
any law which
Miranda.
shall abridge the privileges or immunities of a citizen. Okay, cool.
And so after this all happened, they created the Miranda rights, which police now have to say, which are, you have the right to remain silent. You
have the right to an attorney. Anything you say or use will be used against you in the court of the law. You have. Did I say the right to attorney?
Not yet.
You have the right to remain silent. You have... Wait. What? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to remain... I don't know.
Here,
Be
let me read
quiet.
You have the right to remain silent. You are under arrest. Before we ask you any questions, you must understand what your rights are. You have the right to remain silent. You are not required to say anything to us at any time or to answer any questions. Anything you say can be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we question you, and you have him with you during questioning. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed to you. If you want to answer questions now without a lawyer present, you will still have the right to stop answering at any time. You will also have the right to stop answering at any time until you talk to a lawyer. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used
Against you in the court of law.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to...
Yeah, you already said that part. So, yeah, we've all seen Law & Order. We know what happens when people get... But there are cases where if you are arrested, they do not technically have to read the Miranda rights to you.
Really? Like what?
Well, off the top of my head, shoplifting. Anytime you were arrested as a young ruffian, did they read you your Miranda rights?
No, they did not.
Yeah, because they don't have to for certain things. I think it's some... I'm sure there is an actual reason why, but I don't know. We'll find out someday, you guys. So, let's...
Probably because I was a minor.
That, too, possibly. So, let's get in. Who's going first?
You.
Right. Okay, so my first is the murder and disappearance of Dianne Keidel. Her maiden name was Kidder, and Dianne Kidder grew up in Peoria, Illinois, and she worked at her father's grocery store called Kidder. In 1956, when Dianne was 21, she was in need of money because she had just gotten divorced, and she was raising her daughter, who was 2, Susie, and so she had to make money to take care of her. And while working at Kidder's, Dianne met Dianne Keidel. He was described as not very good looking, but he was able to woo Dianne because he was a smooth talker.
Okay.
The couple dated for a year before they got married, and then they moved to Phoenix, Arizona, where Jean began working in the ever-growing construction company that was booming in Arizona at this time, late 50s. So Dianne and Jean had 3 children together, Greg, Kelly, and Lori. And after being married for almost a decade, Dianne and Jean's relationship was starting to go poorly, and they decided that it would be for the best if they got a divorce. I didn't see anything into that, though, but in the 1960s, they did not have no-fault divorce, so I wonder how they were going to do that. But anyhoozle, on September 17th, 1966, Jean and Dianne met up for dinner to discuss the final details of their home. All of, like, those things like who's keeping what and visitations with the children. The conversation went amicably by all accounts, and afterwards Dianne dropped Jean off at his apartment. After she dropped Jean off, Dianne went to the Amber Inn where she met up with Barb Marlin, a man that she had been casually dating since her separation from Jean.
Okay.
So around 11, Jean called Dianne's house, but the children answered and they said that their mother was still out. So he decided to go over there to watch the children, and he ended up falling asleep on the couch. The next morning, Jean woke up and found Dianne's car in the garage, but there was no sign of Dianne. And Jean called the police and reported her missing. It was obvious that Dianne had at least made it home, and that it wasn't probable that she had left on her own accord because her car was there, her purse was in the house, and her car keys were on the table, and none of her clothes were missing, and Dianne had no reason to run away. Missing persons investigators couldn't understand why Dianne would leave town without her kids, because neighbors and friends and family members all say that Dianne was incredibly, 100% devoted to her children, would do anything for them, and would, of course, never go anywhere and just
leave them. Yeah, up and leave them. That's crazy.
So police went to go and interview Bob Marlin, the man that Dianne had had drinks with the night before, but they unfortunately never got a chance to talk to Bob. The day after his date with Dianne, Bob suffered from a heart attack and died.
Wow.
Yep. So 2 days after Dianne went missing, Jean moved back into the family home to care for the children.
Diane and Jean's youngest daughter remembers that her father's explanation for returning home was that her mother had run off with a boyfriend. He told his children this, he told family members this, he told neighbors this. He was like, no, she left town. You know, that was the story that he told everybody. Jean gave the police a list of men that he said Diane had been dating since their separation, but they all led to nothing. One night, 4 months after Diane went missing, Jean went to a laundromat around 9 p.m., and while he was there, a fire broke out in the Keidels' home. The house was quickly engulfed by flames, with the 4 children trapped inside their bedrooms.
Dude.
Does your story have fire in it too?
Yes.
Crazy. It's very, very sad. Susie, the oldest sister, went to her younger siblings' rooms to help get them out of the house. But Lori, she was running out with Lori, and Lori ran back to her bedroom for her Winnie the Pooh stuffed animal. So Susie ran back after Lori, and Lori fell and got burnt really bad, and she was crying out for her mom, and Susie, laid on top of her and told her that everything was going to be okay, and that she was not going to leave her. Susie ended up dying, protecting her sister, who had been burned so badly. She had 3rd-degree burns covering 50% of her body.
Wow.
Lori's other sister, 8-year-old Kelly, also died in the fire, but her brother Greg survived. Jean got to the house just as firefighters were pulling his children out from the fire. Investigators found a melted pot on the stove which was on, and the fire was ruled as accidental. After Lori had been in the hospital for 4 months...
What year was this?
This was in 1967.
Okay.
1967.
Whoa.
Yeah.
One of mine happens in... Oh, no, just kidding.
In the 60s.
70s.
So Lori, after being in the hospital for 4 months recovering from her injuries, moved into the home that her father had built. Her and her father went to a funeral because a kid from their neighborhood that they'd known growing up died in Vietnam during the war. And Lori was little. She was about 5 years old. And when she saw him... She and her dad went up to the casket. She asked why he wouldn't wake up, or when he was going to wake up, and Jean said he wasn't going to wake up, he's dead, and they're going to bury him in the ground. And Lori began to freak out and crying and was screaming for him to wake up. She had to be dragged out. She was so upset that they were going to bury him. So this event triggered Lori to remember what she had seen the night her mother disappeared.
What?
Something up until now she had been repressing. In 1993, 27 years after her mother's disappearance, Lori was finally able to talk about the night her mother went missing. She went to the police station and gave them a handwritten statement describing the terrible secret she had been hiding for 27 years because she was too afraid to come forward, because her dad was psycho.
Okay. Had he died at this point when she started talking about it?
Had he died?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
She wrote that she was coming forward with the memory she had repressed because of this extreme fear she had of what her father would do to her if she told anyone what she saw. Jean often told his daughter, "I brought you into this world and I can take you out," which is a terrible colloquialism.
It's just such an unoriginal dad.
Well, it was people think it was originally said by now canceled Bill Cosby, but he said that on a 1980 episode of the Cosby Show, and this incident where he would say it to Lori happened way before. And so I was able to find out that the first instance of it was actually from a book from the 1700s.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Anywho, so back to the deeply sad story. Lori said that when she was 5, she watched her father beat her mother to death and bury her in the backyard.
Damn.
Seeing as Lori was only 5 at the time, she didn't know her mother was dead, and instead she thought that she was sleeping, to the point of asking her dad one day if she could dig a hole in the backyard so she could give her mom something to eat.
Oh.
Sorry. It's okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this is why she had such a strong reaction at the funeral of the man who died in Vietnam. she thought he was sleeping, and when her father told her that he was actually dead and was going to be buried, she realized her mom was dead too.
Wow.
Yeah. Lori says that she was not confused about where her mother was.
She was not confused about who had done it, killed her mother. She was just confused because she was 5 years old and she couldn't tell the difference between someone who was dead and someone who's alive.
So, police believed what Lori, my horrible dad, told them, but they needed to make sure that it was more than just a story. So the lead detective obviously wanted hard proof. Lori told the police that her father had put in a concrete patio over the area he buried Dianne.
Oh my God.
The day after he had buried her.
That's literally like American Horror Story Season 1, Murder House.
Yeah. Don't do it.
The
Don't
day
kill people.
after, and no one the fuck said anything?
Right. Right? Well, yeah. Right? At the time when Lori came forward with this information, another family had moved into the house, and police were hesitant to dig up someone else's backyard if it wasn't necessary, but Lori took them to the spot she remembered her father burying her mother, which was the corner edge of the patio.
Why would he do that? That's stupid. He should do it right in the middle.
I mean, there's a picture of it, and it was like kind of by like the side of the house and like a gate.
Okay.
It didn't look weird, I guess, maybe what I'm trying to, like, it didn't look out of place. I don't know.
Okay.
So, because they had a picture of, like, when he redid it. So police looked for over a year for technology that would help them see what was under the concrete without digging it up. And they ended up using a ground-penetrating radar system that's used to check disturbances and abnormalities in the ground.
Interesting.
Used by, like, geologists, mostly. So when they ran the radar over the concrete, it revealed a ground disturbance that was about 6 feet long by 2 feet wide. And it was in the corner of the patio, exactly where Lori had said. The police then removed some of the concrete because they had reason to believe that a buried body, and only had to dig for 10 inches before finding a piece of a human skull. And with hours, they uncovered the entire skeletal remains. On the skeleton was a bra and a girdle, and around the skeleton's neck were a pair of women's stockings.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so Lori obviously knew it was her mother, but there was barely any DNA evidence that they could test because of the bacteria that was in the ground.
And how the fuck would you just know that there's going to be a dead body somewhere?
Right? How would, like, that's, I mean, I guess that's circumstantial, but not really. She was a witness and she saw it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, you can't just literally go, like, be like, oh, there's a dead body right there, and there be a dead body right there.
Unless she killed her mom.
She didn't. She was 5. And
I know, I'm kidding.
She was a wee little girl. So, the teeth had been damaged, and I actually didn't know this, but you have what's called tooth pulp, which is usually protected by, like, the rest of your teeth.
Interesting.
And it's a really good source of DNA. Huh. Also, her dental records had been destroyed because her dentist had died, and all of her x-rays had been, like, shredded and gotten rid of.
That sucks.
Yeah. It was the 50s or 60s. They're like, no, we don't need these anymore. So they had to use whatever evidence they could, and they found a tree root that had been growing through the skull. And the root was analyzed at the University of Arizona by a dendrochronologist, who is someone who studies the age of plants.
Cool.
Yeah, dendro meaning, like, tree or plant, and then chronologist, obviously, meaning chronology. So he was able to determine that the skull had been in the ground before the tree was planted. The tree was planted about 15 years. No, the tree was like 15 years old, meaning that the body was buried before the year 1978.
So this at least gave them a bit of a window.
Oh, okay.
So
for sure.
Yeah, the bones were analyzed, and it was determined that the skeleton belonged to a Caucasian woman about 5'5", or 1.6 meters tall. The pelvic bones indicated that the woman had given birth to at least 2 children.
Whoa.
And that, based on the bones, the person was between the age of 20 and 40.
all of these things were consistent with Dianne.
Mm-hmm. In an effort to get as much information from the skeleton as possible, seeing as they didn't have very much DNA, they used what's called skull photograph superimposition, where you take a picture of the person in real life and superimpose it onto the skull of the person that you think it might have been. And everything matched up. And what was like one of the biggest signifiers was, like, in pictures, you know how people, sometimes their canine teeth are kind of like little vampire teeth?
Mm-hmm.
She had little vampire teeth.
Okay.
And so they were able to see, at least in her jaw, like, what was left, that, like, it matched up with those little vampire teeth. So, police arrested then 61-year-old Dianne Keidel and charged him with Dianne's murder. Jean had told family and friends, like I said, that Dianne had abandoned her children and ran off with a boyfriend, but Lori took the stand and testified against her father, describing what he had done to her mother the night that she was murdered. The night Dianne went missing, Jean had called the house and asked the kids where their mom was and said she was still out, and he went over to wait until she got home. Dianne came home around midnight, and she and Jean started fighting because he was obviously mad that, you know, she had dropped him off and then from there, like, gone out with another guy. He was apparently very, very violent and alcoholic and a very cruel man. Lori said that he beat her mother constantly, and he tried beating the children, and the mom and Dianne was like, no, you will not touch my kids.
Yeah.
So she, like I said, very devoted mother. Not like a mother would be like, yeah, no, fucking hit my kids.
Right.
But, like, she was very, like, no. And so I'm sure because of that, she took a lot more beatings, which is really, really, really fucked up.
Yeah. But that's how it is a lot of the time.
Yes. Very, very sad. So, Dianne and Jean were fighting, and that woke up Lori and her older sister Susie, who went to the stairs to investigate what was happening, and they watched their father beating their mother, and the mom was, like, kind of trying to fight back, you know, like, trying to protect herself, but when she saw her daughters, she kind of let her defenses down, which Jean took advantage of, and punched her in the head, and then she fell and hit her head super hard, which killed her, probably. Lori and Susie saw that their father had spotted them, and they were scared, and they ran and hid in their closet. Eventually, when they thought the coast was clear and enough time had passed, they snuck out of the closet and looked out the window and saw their mother's lifeless body on the pool deck in the backyard. And they also saw that their father was digging a hole.
Oh, my God.
And then the next day, Jean paved over the spot where he buried his wife with concrete, thinking he would never be caught. Like I said, Lori described her father, Jean, as an alcoholic and a very violent man who would often beat Dianne. And in 1995, Dianne Keidel was convicted for the murder of Dianne and was sentenced to life in prison. Although during the time of his trial, the death penalty was in place, it was not in place when he killed Dianne. So he was not up for that.
Interesting.
Also, Lori believes that it was her father who started the fire that killed her two sisters in an attempt to silence them so that they could never, ever tell anyone. Because he always would tell them, if you tell anyone what I did, I will kill you.
Yeah. Damn.
And so the fire that was first determined to be an accident was later changed to arson. Lori sued the city of Phoenix for not investigating the fire more thoroughly, and she received a settlement of $5.5 million.
Dang.
And over the years, Jean repeatedly tried for an appeal, but on December 7th, 2004, Jean died in prison.
Due to...
They did not say. Let's say being a shithead.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a crazy story.
It's a very crazy story. I watched it on Forensics Files, which is why I like watching Forensics Files, because I like the forensics behind it.
I feel that.
Because it's really interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
That they are able to, like, look for things in the ground. I mean, that makes sense. They do it in Jurassic Park.
What year was that when they did that?
That was in
like
1990...
80s? Oh, okay.
It would have been 96 if she told them in 95 and it took them a year to just be able to find the
So is
technology.
95 the year
She came
that
forward.
she went to the funeral and, like, found the body?
No, 1995 was when she finally came forward and was able to tell people what happened. The funeral happened after the fire and after, she had gotten out of the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is the very sad story of Dianne.
That's crazy.
Keidel / Kidder.
That is a fucking crazy story. And now we're going to move on to another crazy story that also happened in Arizona, but this time Scottsdale.
We've been there.
Yeah, both of my stories actually take place in Scottsdale.
Both of mine take place in Phoenix.
Wow! I guess those are the two major cities. Well, there's others. But anyways, so on the morning of April 10th, 2001...
Tucson.
True son. Firefighters responded to a large house fire. Neighbors said that the house literally blew up, which was strange because it was a brick house.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Neighbors also alerted the officials that there was the possibility that the family was still in the house. The whole, when they came to, check and firefighters came to, burn it down not burn it down, to put it out because they didn't want it to go into any other homes.
Right.
It was literally just, a big hole. The house was, gone.
The inside was completely gutted, basically.
Mm-hmm. When they went to start searching the wreckage, they found 3 bodies. And what was also strange was that the bodies were all still in their beds, which usually during fires does not happen.
No, usually are woken up by that sort of thing, and you get out quick.
Or at least you try to get out and you're somewhere.
Yeah. Something happened.
The bodies were 2 children, Brittany, who was 12, and her little brother, Bobby, who was 10, and their mother, Mary Fisher. The children's throats had been slashed, and so had the mother's, and the mother had also been shot in the back of the head with a .38 revolver. And then, like I said, her throat was already also slashed. Officials say that their throats were slit so deep that they hit their vertebrae of their necks.
They're basically almost decapitated.
Yeah.
Yikes.
One person was missing from all of this, and that was the father, Robert Fisher. So when they started searching about the fire, the house had liquid accelerant all over the floors.
Okay.
Meaning whoever wanted to burn the house down wanted it to burn down fast.
Yeah.
There was also a gas line that had been very clearly broken, and the way that it was broken was making it spew gas throughout the house. And so what happened was someone lit a candle, and gas first, what it does is it rises, but then once it gets so heavy in the air, it drops. And so 10 hours after someone lit that candle, it dropped, hit the candle, and the whole house blew up.
No.
Yeah.
So they knew what they were doing then, obviously.
Yeah. Robert Fisher, at the time, before the murders, worked as a respiratory tech at a Mayo clinic. He had also previously served in the U.S. Navy, and people really described him as a very outdoorsman.
Like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec.
Maybe. I don't know. Does he hunt?
Oh, yeah. Does he hunt?
I've never watched that show.
We will. We're still in quarantine, y'all.
So Robert's sister said that she could not believe her brother could ever do something like this, but friends of him who used to hunt with him said that they often saw his more aggressive side. After killing large animals, he would smear the blood all over his body. And there was also a story about, one time him and his friends were, fishing, and there was these other fishermen, and he, swam across the lake with a knife and, made them leave or something like that.
So he had a history of some weirdness.
Correct. Neighbors say that they also oftentimes heard screaming coming from the house, mostly from Mary to him, saying, I want to leave you, I'm too good for you, all of this kind of stuff. And then it was also known that Robert had an affair with a sex worker, which he got very sick and says that he got a UTI from. And after that, he basically was just really wanting to change his ways and become a Christian and prove that he really wanted to be a family man, even though a lot of people said that he didn't seem like he really was, which apparently he grew up in a household that was also similar, or at least so I read. No one knows exactly why Robert would murder his family, but friends and family said that Mary was, like I said, planning on divorcing him, and he was, like, said once that he would rather die than, like, be divorced. Like, he never wanted to get divorced.
When women break up with men, it's their most vulnerable time in their life. They're most likely to be hurt. Yeah. Because, especially if they're leaving an abusive husband, they're... at more at risk.
So the night before the house caught on fire, because it basically happened at like 9 or 10 in the morning when the house like finally like exploded. But they think that probably around like 9 o'clock at night before, or no, like maybe like 10 o'clock at night before is when he lit the candle and left, which means he had killed them. And then, like, did all of that, lit the candle, and left. Because the last time he's ever seen was taking money out of his bank in this bank's surveillance camera, and that was around, like, 10 to 11 p.m.
Okay.
So 10 days after the murders, police found the family car and the family dog, whose name is Blue, in Tonto National Forest. Blue had, like, not left the car. He was just, like, around the car pacing and, like, really nervous. And, like, obviously, like, they said that he had, like, burrs on his mouth, which meant that he, like, had gotten hungry and, like, had, like, gotten food. But he was, like, staying with the car. But they searched this park is near Young, Arizona, which is 100 miles north of Scottsdale. And it's apparently, like, has a lot of caves.
Okay.
And so Robert was never found. Apparently, people don't think that they searched the caves well, because they were like, he could have like went in there and hid. He could have went in there and killed himself. Like, they didn't do a well enough search of the grounds.
Okay.
And also, people think that like maybe he like just hid in there and then left, and that now he has like a whole new family somewhere else.
Huh.
He was never found, but on June 22nd, 2002, he was added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Robert is 6 feet tall. He would be 59 years old now.
Oh, wow.
Actually, his birthday literally was earlier this
Top
April.
10?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy.
And if anyone has any information, please call the police immediately. This happened 20 years ago now, almost to the day.
Wow. That's really fucked up.
Yeah, so that is the Fisher family murders.
All right. Well, we are going to take a little break.
Are you working from home with thousands of distractions during the quarantine? Studio's 12 earbuds will be your best friend.
The 12 earbuds feature a graphene driver for enhanced sound clarity. They also have automatic pairing between the earbuds and your device.
12 features a microphone on both earbuds so you can use them for conference calls or FaceTiming those you can't see right now.
Get 15% off your whole purchase using our code GRIM.
That's GRIMM with 2 M's like I just said at checkout for 15% off. That's 15.
You got that right, Morgan.
What?
All right, so back to Arizona Killers. You know what you said. Okay, so my next story is about Scott Falater and his wife, Yarmila Falater.
Okay.
Which is a very unfortunate last name. It sounds like a person who performs fellatio.
Yeah, I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to say it. You know what I'm saying?
It's okay. So Scott and Yarmila met in high school, and then they got married when they were in college. Their marriage was described as happy and loving, and they were faithful to one another, and they had no history of abuse. They were very active in the Church of Latter-day Saints. They were both Mormon, and Scott was a personal and family counselor and a teacher at the church, which was in Phoenix, Arizona, where they lived. January 16th, 1997, neighbors of Scott and Yarmila Falater, who were both 41 years old at the time,
called 911 after hearing screaming and a dog barking coming from the couple's house. The neighbor looked over his fence and watched Scott stab Yarmila 44 times.
Whoa.
Afterwards, he watched Scott go into the house and change his clothes. When he came back out, he rolled Yarmila's body into the family's pool and held her head underwater.
So she wasn't dead?
No.
Wow.
He hid the murder weapon. He went back inside and he hid the murder weapon and his bloody clothes in a plastic, Tupperware container and put it in the trunk of his Volvo, and then went inside to go to bed, where the couple's 2 children were already sleeping. Scott remembers being abruptly woken by the police who swarmed his house after receiving the 911 call. The police found Yarmila's dead body face down in the pool and promptly arrested Scott. When police questioned him, he said he had no memory of killing his wife, and he said that he had been sleepwalking. So that was his excuse. He said that the last thing that he remembered that night was that Yarmila was in the living room watching ER when he went upstairs to bed.
What year was this? The 90s?
This was the 90s.
Okay.
She could have been watching reruns on Netflix, but she wasn't. So it was probably a Thursday night unless she was watching syndicated episodes.
Yes.
So he went to bed, and the next thing that he remembers is the police arresting him. During the interrogation, Scott said, "Obviously you think I did it. I don't know what makes you think that." And the officer was like, "Well, because you had a neighbor staring at you watching you do it."
So the neighbor saw everything happen?
The neighbor saw everything happen. He said he had no memory of killing his wife, saying he had been sleepwalking. And he was like, "My neighbor saw me push her into the pool. You've got to be kidding me." It wasn't like he was denying it. It was more like he was like in disbelief that it had even happened at all. Scott's sister talked to the police, and she told them that Scott had a history of sleepwalking. And one time when they were younger, Scott had started attacking her while he was sleepwalking, and when she tried waking him up, he threw her across the room. The authorities sent Scott to the Sleep Disorders Service and Research Center, and experts studied his brainwaves over a 4-day period, and they found abnormalities that are associated with sleepwalkers. Researchers have found that sleepwalkers aren't capable of facial recognition, which is why they attack people they know.
Because that's who's around them.
Exactly. There are several people with sleepwalking issues who have jumped out of windows, that have put their hands through glass, and even, in some cases, are violent towards those that they love the most. Non-sleepwalkers move from one stage of sleep seamlessly to the next without waking up, but sleepwalkers can't transition from deep sleep into a dream sleep stage of sleep, so they become in a state where they're not fully awake nor fully asleep. Their brain is functioning as if it were awake and asleep. So they kind of act out their dreams a little bit. Due to Scott's sleepwalking, he couldn't be responsible for Yarmila's death because there had been another case where a man had been acquitted of killing his mother-in-law and attempting to kill his father-in-law while he was sleepwalking. But was Scott innocent by means of not being able to tell the difference between right or wrong at the time of killing?
Murder.
Or had there been a possible motive?
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It's still murder, but they tried looking for like a possible motive that he could have had for killing her.
Right.
Police learned that the couple's marriage wasn't as picture perfect as those had made it seem, and as I said before, Scott was super involved in the church, and Yarmila was not as into it as she was, and she was starting to resent Scott a little bit for how much time he spent there. And how he was just completely consumed by the church. Yarmila was actually thinking of divorcing Scott. She was tired of the demands of the church, while Scott was fully committed. Scott wanted to have more children, and Yarmila did not. Mormon families typically have several children.
Yeah.
But Yarmila was like, 2 is enough. I'm not having any more kids. Just because it's like the Mormon thing to do. Plus, they had 2 teenagers at this time, so it would have been a huge life change for them, and
to have another baby,
to have babies again. The prosecutors for this case hired their own sleep analysis, and they monitored Scott's behavior in the night, or they looked at the analysis of Scott's behavior the night of the murder, trying to look for any evidence that Scott had been sleepwalking. And this sleep analysis found nothing significant from Scott's brain scans that were much different from the brain scans from non-sleepwalkers. For example, it had the same patterns of someone with sleep apnea, which is grossly different from sleepwalking.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Scott said that that night, he got out of bed and he got dressed and he took a flashlight outside. Dr. Pressman, who is the prosecutor's sleep expert, says that a true sleepwalker cannot distinguish the difference between night and day, meaning Scott was able to tell that it was nighttime. He knew it was chilly outside because he put on warm clothes.
Yeah,
and he knew to need a flashlight. And this isn't something a sleepwalker
would ever
would be aware of. Yeah, Scott's neighbor had told police. Like I said, he could see into Scott's house and saw Scott.
He made several decisions.
Exactly. He changed out of his bloody clothes. He put his clothes and the murder weapon into a container and hid them.
Yeah.
He also bandaged a cut on his hand, which again shows that he was consciously aware of the fact that he was injured, which does not happen to sleepwalkers. The neighbor also witnessed Scott try to calm down his dog because it was really
upset,
barking, and it was agitated. And yet he says that he could not hear his wife screaming, but he was somehow able to hear the dog. The defense's sleep expert claimed that Scott couldn't hear the dog. He was just, this is the defense. He couldn't hear the dog. He was just reacting to the dog jumping up at him, like as he was walking to the pool. And they also said that as he was walking, because apparently something was wrong with the pool, and so the defense's theory was that he had been working on the pool during the day, and so when he got up at night, he went outside to work on the pool again. So when he was walking to the part of the pool he needed to fix, he stumbled upon Yarmilla's body, which he couldn't identify. And this is sort of creepy. The neighbor said that he watched Scott just stand over Yarmilla's body and just like stare blankly at her, which could be seen as, someone sleepwalking trying to see, or a cold-blooded killer. You never know. And so they say that he saw her just as an obstacle and that was in his way, and so he just pushed her into the water. But if he was just trying to push her out of the way, why would he hold her head underwater?
No.
Yeah.
He motherfucking did it, and he motherfucking knows that he did.
No. So the jury had to look at all of this evidence presented and decide what to believe. In 1999, Scott stood trial for the murder of his wife Yarmilla, and he pleaded not guilty. Though there have been dozens of cases involving sleepwalking, the prosecution were very good at painting a picture of what happened the night of Yarmilla's death. The fact that he knew to clean himself up and was able to successfully bandage up his hand, the fact that he knew that he needed to get rid of evidence, that he killed his wife by hiding it in the trunk of his car, and the fact that when Scott got back to the pool, he was aware of the dog making so much noise and calmed him to not draw attention to himself. He was also able to tell that Yarmilla was still breathing after he stabbed her in the chest and upper torso 44 times, so he dragged her to the pool and drowned her because he wanted her to die.
Wow.
The prosecutors, led by Juan Martinez, who went on to be the prosecutor in the Jodi Arias case in 2005.
Oh, yeah.
He said that Scott's original plan was to kill his wife at night and have his children find their mother's body floating in the pool. And he was going to say that she was killed by an intruder.
Yeah.
But those plans changed when a neighbor saw everything, which made Scott have to change his story.
That's crazy. Can you imagine seeing all of that? And also, I totally was thinking, I wish I hadn't done Jodi Arias yet so I could do it for Arizona, but,
Yeah, but that's a whole other thing.
Totes.
So, the Dr. Pressman, the sleep expert, testified for the prosecution, and he listed 65 behaviors Scott exhibited during the crime that were inconsistent with sleepwalkers, noting that touching the cold pool water alone would have been enough to wake him up from sleepwalking. He also said that people who are sleepwalking aren't able to form new memories, and Scott was able to recognize that his clothes were bloody from killing his wife, and he knew that he had to get rid of them.
Scott took the stand and testified on his behalf. He said that he had gone crazy or that something in his head was broken. He did look very upset.
Yeah.
But...
Well, you might have been upset, but that doesn't mean you didn't kill her.
That he didn't do it on purpose, exactly. Yeah. He was emotional, but it was not enough for the jury to buy, and they found Scott guilty of murder in the first degree, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
Yeah. Dang.
He is
the
like,
neighbor. It's very like Rear Window.
Rear Window too. I mean, that's
can
basically.
Can we watch Disturbia tonight?
I thought we were gonna watch Argo.
Okay, can we watch Disturbia tomorrow?
Sure. Let's.
That's crazy.
I know it's a really crazy story. Just because he was sleepwalking.
Or was he? Okay, so we just realized that the soundboard was off, so this might all be sounding really weird, and also it's really raining, so that might come in. But
yeah, my mic was down a little bit, so oops. It should be normal now, guys.
All right,
literally, it's so much different. Why are we bad at this? It's been like 3 years. It's been 3 years.
Anyways, we're learning on a new format because usually we're using something else at home. Anyway,
this is like the fifth time.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the final story, and that is the murder of Bob Crane. Now, some people are probably older listeners would know Bob Crane as the wisecracking title character on the 1960s sitcom Hogan's Heroes, which was a World War II series.
Comedy. It was basically like silly antics against
pretty
the
much.
Germans. It's
and
hilarious.
He actually got 2 Emmy noms from this show. Bob was born July 13th, 1928 in Waterbury, Connecticut. He began a love for drumming at age 11, and he played in his school's marching band, jazz band, and the orchestra.
Get it,
right?
Bob.
He also had an illustrious career as a radio personality in New York, Connecticut, and Los Angeles. And he also, I guess, was a disc jockey, which I'm sure meant something very different in the 60s.
A disc jockey?
DJ?
A DJ? Yeah, no, that meant he talked on the radio. That's what DJs were.
Cool.
Disc jockeys worked on at the radio station.
Nice.
They were literally jockeys. Like, they got discs and let you listen to them. Work.
So like I said, Bob played Colonel Robert Hogan in Hogan's Heroes, which aired from 1965 to 1971. After Hogan's Heroes ended, Bob did a few other acting things, and he also had the Bob Crane Show, which aired on NBC, but it didn't do super well, so it didn't last very long.
Sorry, Bob.
But another big thing that Bob liked to do was dinner theater.
Who amongst us does not?
Which is basically like when you go to a show, but the show is also very centralized on like having a good dinner at the show. So it's not like a Broadway play where your only thing is going, they're like fun.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. This is to the audience.
Yeah. So in the summer of 78, Bob was touring a show called Beginner's Luck. He was in Scottsdale, Arizona, where he actually had an apartment.
So wait, this was a traveling
I
dinner
guess?
theater?
Or
Okay.
no. I think he was doing it in Arizona, and I think he was staying in his apartment in Arizona while he was doing this play as his job.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so on June 29th, Bob's co-star of Beginner's Luck came to his apartment after he had failed to show up for lunch plans. She had a key to the apartment.
Okay.
That is where she found Bob's body. At first, when she walked in, she couldn't even recognize him because he had been beaten so badly. He was bludgeoned, actually.
Oh, no.
And so at first she thought that maybe he was like a woman, or the girl who found him thought maybe it was a woman because she saw all the blood. She thought it was hair.
Oh,
like a bunch of hair. So the murder weapon has never been found, but police believe a camera tripod was what beat him to death, and he had also had an electrical cord wrapped around his neck. Some people didn't know until his death that Bob liked to film himself sleeping with women a lot. After his apartment was searched, it was later discovered that several of the women who he had tapes with had absolutely no knowledge that they had been filmed. A man named John Henry Carpenter, not John Carpenter of Halloween, obviously.
Right. That's why they gave that. That's why usually serial killers have all three of their names.
Yeah. He was one of his friends. He was a regional sales manager for Sony, which is where Bob kind of started learning a lot more about like camera equipment. and like, you know, how to like shoot movies on his own because he really liked filming himself fucking.
So he wanted really high quality
basically
fuck videos. Okay.
Yeah. So when police arrived at the apartment, it like the whole place was totally darkened. Like Arizona's so bright and sunny, but when you walk inside this apartment, it's black. All the curtains were drawn.
Love that.
There were cameras and film and videotapes everywhere. Like there's photos of it. There's also like photos of his dead body. But there's literally
As is usually the case with murders.
The apartment was definitely in like disarray, but not like because of the murder, just like
himself.
He was not living a great life there. There even like in his bathroom, he basically had like a black room or what's it called? A dark room.
A dark room
in his bathroom where he was developing like porn of all these women that he was
so
sleeping
he was
with.
very avid.
The crime scene was muddied, as some would say, meaning that it had tons of people walking around in it and smoking in it.
Fuck.
Specifically, the woman who found his body, they let her be in there while they were like questioning her and while she was like calming down and smoking a bunch.
Yeah, I don't know why people in this time thought it was cool to smoke everywhere, like airplanes and hospitals and crime scenes.
It was also of note that at this time,
come on, Morgan, I can see it in your not eyes because they're closed.
Scottsdale did not have a very large police force, and especially something this high profile because he was a celebrity.
Right.
They didn't have like what they probably do now
in terms of
like how good their policing.
Well, yeah, no, I mean this was what year? The 60s,
This
70s?
was 78.
Yeah, I mean, come on. They weren't smart, you know, yeah.
So while examining all the records, police questioned John Carpenter. Again, not the one from Halloween.
John Henry.
He had flown to Phoenix on the 25th, and then obviously drove to Scottsdale in a rental car, which was obviously searched, and it had blood. Now, at this time, there was no DNA testing.
Okay.
But they did find that the blood type that matched the car also matched Bob's blood type and did not match any blood type of anyone else who had been in the car. So like any of the workers that worked there or the John Carpenter guy.
Okay.
So it was type B, and that was for Bob.
Type B for Bob.
Like I said, they didn't have DNA testing. There was no sign of forced entry at Bob's home, and also nothing was missing. So basically, the Maricopa attorney decided not to file any charges against anyone because there was literally no evidence.
Yeah.
And the case was kind of never solved.
Which is crazy because of the brutal manner in which he was murdered and the fact that he was a celebrity. You'd think that...
Right.
You know, more would be done about that.
So the evidence was re-examined in 1990, and
Love
the
that.
DNA found in the rental car was inconclusive. There was, however, photos that were taken, and when being re-examined, they noticed that it looked like there may have been brain matter in the car.
Oh.
But the samples of the brain matter had been lost. However, in June of 1992, 14 years almost to the date of the killing, an Arizona judge ruled that the newfound evidence was admissible, and Carpenter was arrested and charged with the murder of Bob Crane. Bob's son testified in court saying that Bob was openly talking about ending his friendship with Carpenter and that he felt he was a bit of a hanger-oner and that it was becoming too much, almost to the point of, like, really becoming obnoxious.
Like single white female?
Yeah.
Like, scary?
He also testified saying that the evening of Bob's murder, he had called Carpenter and ended their friendship, specifically.
Jeez, what is it with men having their relationships canceled that makes them cancel?
No, it's like they broke up.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly... He got killed kind of for, like, the same exact reason as, like, these poor women.
So, they used to, like, sleep with women together a lot, too.
Okay, I mean, it was a
So, like, a lot of the videos had
like
John,
sex.
so that's actually how the police even found John.
Oh, so, not to split hairs, but, like, threesomes or, like, group sex or, like, a little bit of... Oh.
A little bit of all of it, I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Carpenter was in the end, acquitted because there was no real evidence. The idea of the camera tripod being the murder weapon was only a theory with no real evidence. Carpenter's lawyers also argued that there were so many women who had been filmed in and out of that apartment, and there was a great chance that one of them could have killed him, or an angry boyfriend.
Angry boyfriend? Oh, an angry boyfriend of one of the girls. Okay.
In 1998, Carpenter died, and he maintained his innocence until that day. Then there was another DNA test done in November of 2016 using a more advanced technique, but this was also found inconclusive and consumed the last remaining DNA left, making any future tests impossible.
Fuck.
So Bob had been married twice, and he had children with both women. Well, he definitely had children with the first woman who, one of the sons, the one who testified in court, he has now later come out, when pretty much after the other guy died, he came out saying that he's almost 100% now certain that his second wife is who killed him.
Oh. Huh.
Because she's the only person who got any money when he died. Like, he hadn't left anything to any of his children or his, like, old wife or anything like that. It all had been left to this woman, who they weren't even together at the time of his death. They were, like, divorced.
He may have
but
never
people say that they were getting back together kind of during this time, too. Even though he was obviously sleeping around.
Well, he liked group stuff. Maybe he was polyamorous.
Yeah, but to this day, still...
No one knows who killed Bob Crane. That's very sad.
I know. Dad, I was talking to Dad about it, obviously, because he would know, because he was alive when it happened. Yeah. And he said that there also, like, I guess maybe stuff had came out of him being gay.
I'm sure.
And, like, them maybe, like, having an actual relationship together. But that's, I don't know if that to be real or not. I didn't
maybe
find any of that in my researches.
Right. I mean, and they could have construed the fact that they were having group sex together, that they were maybe gay, that kind of stuff. And it was the 70s.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's where he got that from.
Maybe. Like,
if you have sex
the
in the same room with another man, you're automatically gay, even though we know that is not true.
No, but I mean, you could definitely, in the 70s, definitely people could have speculated and thought that.
Yeah.
Just out of ignorance.
But I just think that's so crazy that such a high-profile person was, like, brutally murdered, and we have no idea.
I mean, Natalie Wood, yo. We got to talk about her sometime.
Dude, yeah.
But yeah, it's absolutely horrible. I mean, technically, we do know who killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, but in O.J. Simpson's little world, who knows?
Who knows?
So... that has been another rifling episode of the Sisters Grimm podcast. We hope you all are staying inside, and if you are people who are down on your luck, I hope that this makes you happy.
Aww.
Question mark?
Same exclamation point.
Well, I just hope that, you find
everyone's
things.
Staying safe and happy and healthy.
A lot of people have it a lot better off. They were saying this was an equalizer of a virus, and it is very, very not. People who have money are doing much better than those who are not. Yeah. And so those are the people that we need to support. And those are the people that are getting more sick. So everyone, stay in your house.
Yeah, even though a lot of states are opening things back up now.
There's a lot of people, well, apparently there was an island off of, part of Japan, but it was like, it's an island, and they opened up too soon, and they had a really bad second wave. And so that's kind of the model that they're going off of now, because now in the U.S., they're doing that, and they're saying that the virus is starting to reach more rural areas.
Yeah.
And because rural areas are, hospitals are so far and few, and they don't have the same sort of medical resources, and if it happens, it'll be pretty bad. So let's just hope it doesn't happen.
Let's all just stay inside, y'all.
Let's all stay inside. Don't hug anyone. If you go out, wear a mask.
Yeah, people are not wearing masks.
No, people are not wearing. I am very displeased with the number of people who were not wearing masks when I went out today.
Same.
Was it today? Yes, it was today.
It was today.
Yeah, I hadn't been out of the house in a week, which I know is not something to really complain about, but honestly, it is kind of a big deal.
It's kind of depressing.
It's a little depressing. So,
all right. Well, you can follow us at the Sisters Grimm Podcast on Instagram and Facebook and Google and
we're just on Google,
and then Sisters Grimm Pod on Twitter. And
oh my God, you know how like there's AR for you can like, Google an animal and you can have that be in real space. What if that was us? Like when you Googled us, you could like put like augmented. Yeah, there was augmented reality.
I wouldn't want that for anyone.
Yeah, no, I'm very annoying.
I meant like I don't want you to look at me.
We know you're cute.
Aww.
Your AR version of yourself would obviously be the cutest version of yourself.
True.
It wouldn't be like you're, just woke up.
Currently.
No, I'm not saying that. So that has been this episode. That's been an episode.